especially after seeing all of the possible features and people brainstorming about what this could be and what would be worth you actually having in it to make you actually want to spend just a little bit more. Unfortunately, I think I'd be willing to spend a pretty penny. For me, anywhere from $800 to $1,200. First of all, let me just say, hot damn was I on the mark, man. Even though it sometimes sucks to be right, but alas. With all of the Valve Deckard news coming out the last couple weeks, my brain has reached a fever pitch, and oh boy is there plenty to talk about, but let me quickly bring you up to speed on all that has happened. Quickly, a fairly known and credible Valve leaker has kind of confirmed everything that we've been speculating for a couple years now. This person's been right about many things in the past, and the things that they confirmed were things like Valve is working on a high-end headset aimed at VR and flat-screen gaming, as well as it being standalone and focused on wireless play, along with having better lenses and so on and so forth. And the thing that people have been speculating for a long time, Valve is planning on selling this at a loss. But it's still gonna cost a pretty penny of $1,200, but this keyword right in here gives me a little bit of hope. It says bundle. Maybe, just maybe, more on that later. But alas, let's chat. First things first, how do you guys feel about the price tag? I know a lot of people were just hoping for like a better index or Valve's take on kind of a big screen beyond, but I think this headset, as much as the price point is a pain point, makes the most sense. I mean, if you look at Pico, them trying to compete with Meta's ravenous amounts of money and subsidizing is a rough sell, and seemingly hasn't really went well with them. And on top of all that, Valve has spoken ad nauseum about the fact that they don't really like the fact that VR is being almost degraded in some capacity. They give Meta their chops and tell them that's a fantastic that they've opened up the market more or less and given more people the opportunity to experience this thing, but it also kind of crushed the magic of this said thing. The thing that made people go, wow, this is the future. One of the best examples of this to me is Blade and Sorcery played on like the Quest, which I'm assuming has gotten better, but holy shit is this footage scuffed. It looks horrible. Looks like, why? I don't want to be there. I don't want to experience that, no. So it makes sense for Valve to find that sweet spot of what is the most magical experience that makes people say, yes, this is absolutely the future, but subsequently is also something that more people can at least access, not needing a $2,000 PC and yada yada yada. The price point is still a pain point, especially if you're not in the US. Oh, my fellow non-US brothers and sisters out there. More on that later as well. But more or less, all that kind of stuff happened like a month ago. So why make a video now? Because we just got some shocking information that the fabled Deckard might actually be closer than we think. If you haven't been hard hovering over the Valve Deckard Reddit, well, you would have missed this absolute bombshell tweet by, sadly, it's Bradley, a very well-known Valve leaker and just connoisseur of anime girls, all this stuff, brought courtesy of Big Screen Beyond's new lenses and improvements they've made to their headset. In the subsequent tweet, Bradley heavily hints that this actually might be closer than we think, maybe Q2 or even Q3, but hopefully Q2, baby. Not to mention that potential dev kits might already be out, and holy shit, that NDA must be tighter than Choir Boy See the New Bishop. Anyways, as cool as all of that is, that's not exactly why I wanted to make this video. I want to completely fall into the madness about the speculation and the various angles that Valve might be trying to play here, all the while using the price tag as our kind of golden standard or guiding line to validate some of the possible speculation that we might have and see if it maybe can make some sense. We're going to be treading some old ground here, so bear with me. We're going to be starting off with the Quest 3 and the Steam Deck as kind of a baseline for pricing, scaling off of what Valve might be open to be doing and the bare minimum of what they kind of have to do to compete with these other headsets. Let's start off with the Quest 3's pricing. After some heavy Googling about micro OLED displays, they seem to cost a whopping $300 per piece, meaning if we have two lenses, that's going to be $600 just for the lenses. Granted, there is news that Valve has been investing in companies that do micro OLED, so maybe they can cut a kind of good deal of manufacturing, but still, holy shit, is that taking a big old chunk out of our potential headset. And if we take the price tag of the Quest 3, which is around $500 to $600, and then we add $600 on top of that, we're basically at, it's not looking great, especially for eye tracking and all the things that the thing is supposed to have. But hypothetically speaking, there could be an optional, bundle or non-bundle that doesn't have the processing puck if they do go the processing puck route. And with all the rumors about the Steam Deck and Valve's background with PC VR gaming, it wouldn't be a shocker for them to basically make a product that could apply to multiple people, i.e. you don't have to pay for what you're not going to essentially use, i.e. that processing puck. But more on this a little bit later. Back to the really hard sell of micro OLED displays being in this headset. No matter how much I think about it, I just think it's very unlikely to get full on top of the line pixel density with crazy resolutions just like the Apple Vision Pro. I think it's way more likely for Valve to focus on getting really crisp lenses like the big screen beyond, as well as moving their focus more to refresh rate, which is more in line with their PC player audience. Let me ask you, if Valve gave you a headset that had really, really high displays, like 4K per eye, i.e. 8K, but I hate when people say that, it's a lie. Anyways, but like let's say 70 refresh rate, or if you had a headset that was able to get to around like 2 to maybe 3K resolution, but then pump the refresh rate up to like 130, 140, I think that makes so much more sense for what this headset is directly aiming at, i.e. you can play your Steam library on a big ass curved monitor with 3D depth mapping so you can perceive it like a window and look into it like it's an actual window into that world. I think that makes much more sense to go after that crowd, like a monitor that's really, really crisp and really, really good, and would be something that we don't really have, which is like a crazy, like imagine playing your favorite game on like a massive theater-like screen with decent refresh rate. That'd be kind of wild and not something that you can get even near cheap. So micro OLED I think are out, and I think it makes much more sense that Valve would instead be going for OLED displays, which are shockingly, unless I'm missing something in my Googling or ChatGPTing and all that kind of stuff, trying to find out what the actual manufacturing cost of these are, OLED displays seem much more cheap compared to micro OLED, and that maybe can get us close to some high resolutions without the crazy density of micro OLED, so on and so forth. But I would really like to hear what you guys say with this. I just find the pricing to me doesn't make sense with how much this headset is going to have in it, unless they got a crazy good deal with something, but maybe, we'll see. Anyways, back to the thing. Also, what is the resolution that you would most desire? What is like your bare minimum, and what is the one thing that would be like, okay, this makes it so much more worth it? But let's finally start playing with some price tags. Again, VR OLED screens look actually fairly cheap, but we're just gonna heavily round up because I feel like I'm missing something. It says it's like $20, that doesn't seem right. But let's add $250 for the Quest pricing, bringing it to a grand total of $850. Quest 3 is like $600, adding $250 to that, $850. Yeah, and because there's a lot of rumors for a processing chip, and because of things like lens quality, as well as eye tracking, along with hopefully not just a fucking head strap and maybe some actual like tightening modifications, things like that, let's chalk all of those little features up to being a grand total of $1,000 now, which is, you know, it's still brutal. It's still brutal. The wireless USB connection and the controllers probably add up to be $200. Yeah. Never mind. Ooh, and by the way, for those of you guys who are like, that's too much money, buddy, in the good old Great North here in Canada, that is gonna run me almost $170, okay? Almost a $2,000 headset. Kill me. Smother me, I hate it. Please, Valve. Please don't like do there's tariffs too. Please, something to work out. So yes, the price tag is one hell of a pain point for all of us. Even people who've been waiting and excited for this headset to death. I saved $1,000 thinking, look at me. And then I realized, oh gosh, nothing compared to what it is. As US prices, it's Canadian conversion or dollars, pain. Anyways, here's a possible light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm sorry for gassing up the copium and the hope when it might not come into fruition, but hey, just let me cook for a little while. Here's how we might have a good ending to this kind of pseudo nightmare. I'm still probably gonna get it. I hate myself. Anyways, what if Valve used all of the new emerging technology that we've been seeing for years now, especially in the VR space, such as a processing puck? Think about it. What if you didn't need to actually spend $1,200, but instead, if you had a PC or a Steam Deck, you just had to spend $600 for a headset. Still pricey, don't get me wrong, but think of how nice it would be if you're going on a trip or wanted to take VR on the go for whatever reason. You could always just upgrade later buying this processing puck. But here's where I think this can all really make sense as far as Steam's goal of pushing VR forward, and that is essentially making the VR space more similar to the PC gaming space. Let me explain. If Valve started to do this, to separate the VR headsets and the processing power of said headsets into a small form factor, something that smartphones are already kind of heavily doing, imagine how amazing the open market would be. For example, companies like Asus or Nvidia or any of those other companies that make chips, software, and such could do what they do best, making a processing unit. And maybe other companies that are great for making screens could take a crack at making VR headsets. And this would benefit Valve the entire whole while because all they really care about is more people using VR so that they can use Steam's database of buying games. So if they can kind of try to kickstart this kind of fundamental process, and you see that with Xbox and all of the headsets that are coming out in collaboration with all of these companies, that could be a really huge gain, especially if Valve is leading the way with some of the technology and access to this software that would really make it cook. Again, like 3D depth mapping so that you can actually see like movies in full-fledged 3D. That would be so sick. And if everyone competed in this open market, we would get so much better headsets so much faster, so much better processing pucks so much faster as well. And this would make sense as far as the actual consumer side of things. Think about the PC space. I know a lot of people who absolutely swear that they have to have a refresh rate monitor, a sub 200 frames, 300 frames craziness, and they're playing competitive games at the lowest possible graphical quality just to get a little bit more FPS, because that's what they kind of favor. Meanwhile, their PC is kind of just fine. It's just enough to get them over that FPS marker, right? And then I have people who are the opposite. They don't care about the monitor they look through, they just care about how beefy their graphics card is and how much ultra settings that they can actually tap into. Meanwhile, they're only rocking 2K monitor, so on and so forth. This could be the same thing that VR people could experience. Maybe some people really want higher pixel density VR headsets, and they could upgrade if MSI makes a really affordable one, or if Asus makes a really top of the line one, then they could satisfy that need, and vice versa for anyone who wants to make a processing puck. And frankly, this could be another market that Samsung, even Apple, could possibly get into, considering they're already rocking really small form factor processing units, i.e. phones. And I don't know, man, but to me, if this is what Valve's thinking, which would make a lot of sense for like being the counter to Meta, which Meta has been very like walled garden, we're going to be the main provider of all this stuff, so we're going to get the most like ground covered, but there's not that much competition in the VR space. If companies take this as an opportunity, then holy moly, would this be a birth of an explosion of competition. And I don't know if I'm crazy, but the more I think about it, the way Steam has been moving into like a Steam OS and making that better, and the compatibility modes, and also potentially making a console, and also them working with companies that should kind of be their competitor with like the Steam Deck and its sales. Steam in a lot of ways to me comes across as kind of like old school Google, when Google Fiber was basically just made to push better internet so users had a better experience using Google. It's kind of like these trillion-dollar companies forcing the competition to get better. That way their product is experienced in a better light. I very much feel like a lot of Steam is operating under the same sequence. And the more I see Steam move, the more this doesn't just seem like a pipe dream or a crazy conspiracy. I don't know. I think this would drastically open up the VR space to everybody. Competition makes cheaper products, and cheaper products make better access points, and people having more access points makes VR more open. But also feeding into this market of you can have a better and better experience, there's tons of companies that can survive in this landscape. Like TVs, monitors, graphics cards all vary quite heavily given what you want. And in a weird way, it kind of just works. Maybe it's a little bit tough on the developers for, you know, getting something to be compatible. But again, isn't that what Proton or Steam's like baseline Steam Deck software that kind of tells you what to manufacture for the lowest common denominator? Isn't that kind of what that is? And unlike Meta, who basically makes exclusives, so 90% of the VR games you can actually experience if you happen to have anything that's not a Quest 3, i.e. a stifled and slow market. If Valve did the same thing, but it was open to every kind of VR developer, that to me seems much more viable. And with all the plays that Steam has been doing with like 3D depth mapping, also providing 4 apparent demos to utilize this software and game, as well as possible movies along the horizon and all these areas of disruption that they could enable by using VR, and also just using flat screen gaming and evolving it to make it even better, as well as the other thing where by using eye tracking you might get much better performance out of the games you like, not having to spend money on these insanely expensive graphics cards, and instead just make your hardware more efficient. It all just seems to work and really be a stacked deck in Steam's favor if they're able to convey all of those values or positives that this is going to enable within you and within the market. But with all that being said, this is why I wanted to make the video. This is what I've been thinking about for a long time, and I kind of wanted to gauge people who are a little more clever than me. Am I missing something? Like maybe it's the limitations by the hardware, maybe manufacturers are going to limit this, maybe it's just that Asus and them already have too many balls in play. Why would they make another kind of thing? Maybe everything that we're talking about isn't all that easy, and maybe Steam in fact wouldn't want to make a modular headset, i.e. a headset that has great headset quality, and then separate the processing unit just so to cut down on weight. Maybe the manufacturing cost to separate those two things would just be too great. But I think it makes a lot more sense if you ever wanted to upgrade in the future. Perhaps I'm just heavily coping because $1,700, and I didn't even account for the tariffs in there. Oh boy, there could be a lot of cope here, guys. I'm just fighting for my life, hoping that I don't have to drop that much money. Oh, $1,200 never looked so not shitty when you were looking at $170. Please let me know what you think. Thank you so much for your time. Consider subscribing. Love ya, and bye.